So today we're looking at a trig identity practice problem. The question reads, determine which step in the following trig identity is incorrect, then solve for the correct answer. So before we start the question, if we look over here to the right, we have our trig identity tables, right, which show our reciprocal and our Pythagorean identities. And underneath that, we have the 4 steps that I like to follow when doing trig identity problems. So the first step is to start on the easier side. So in this question, that would be starting on our right side. Step 2 is to change everything to cos and sine. Step 3 is that if there are fractions that we can add, then we're going to add them. And step 4 is to collect any like terms if possible. Extra things to keep an eye on is that every step we're going to check if there is anything that we can cancel. And the second thing is we're going to look for this specific trig identity, which is sine squared plus cos squared x is equal to 1. Okay, now getting into the problem, right, if we follow our steps, we're going to start with that right side. So our right side is just 1 over secant x. And from there, they went to 1 over cos x, which, if we look at our trig identities, that step makes sense, as secant theta is equal to 1 over cos theta. Now, looking at the left side, going from step 1 to step 2, they had secant x, and they changed that into 1 over cos x, which is what we just did on that right side. Now, the other step they did is they changed tan to sine over cos. Now, that's not on our trig identity table, but if we remember, tan of x is just equal to sine of x over cos of x. Then we keep our sine of x the same, which leaves us with sine of x times sine of x over cos of x. And now we've completed step 2 of our 4 steps. So going on to the third step in the question here, we went from 1 over cos x to 1 over cos x. So let's take a second to look at this one here. Now, when we have this division on top of division here, we need to be very careful. So the question is 1 over cos x. Now, another way that we could write that is just 1 divided by 1 over cos x. Now, looking at it this way, it might look a bit more familiar, right? If we have our fractions and we're dividing them, all we need to do is flip the second one and it becomes multiplication. So now this is 1 times cos x over 1. Now, cos x over 1, anything divided by 1 is just itself. So that'll just become 1 times cos x, and 1 times anything is just itself. So this whole thing, 1 over cos x, is just equal to cos x. So if we go back up top here, we can see that they put this as 1 over cos x instead of just cos x. So we've identified where they've gone wrong. But now let's continue through on the left side and get to the final correct answer. So our left side here, they went from 1 over cos x minus sine x times sine x over cos x. And they went from that to 1 minus sine squared x over cos x. So look in here, we have 2 fractions, and our rule 3 is add fractions if you can. And our fractions have the same common denominator, meaning we're able to just subtract them across. So 1 minus sine x times sine x, we can combine those sine x's to become sine squared x, and all of that will just be over cos x. Now on to the next step in this question. They go from 1 minus sine squared x over cos x to cos squared x over cos x. So how did they get from 1 minus sine squared x to cos squared x? So if we go back to our rules here, let's make some space. And if we look at our little thing to keep an eye out for, we said at the very start, let's keep an eye out for our sine squared x minus cos squared x is equal to 1. Now, it's not that exact identity, but what we can do with that identity is rearrange the variables so that we can put sine squared x over on the side with the 1, which means that we are just now left with cos squared x is equal to 1 minus sine squared x, which is how they went from 1 minus sine squared x to cos squared x in step 4 of this question. Now, for this last step in the question here, they have cos squared x over cos x, and that becomes cos x. So all they did was that square on top you can cancel out with the cos on the bottom, and all you're left with is cos x. So our left side looks good. So now let's go back to where they made an error on that right side and fix this up here. So 1 over cos x. Let's write it out like we did before, which is 1 divided by 1 over cos x, and we showed this is just equal to cos x. So now our final answer here is cos x on the left side is equal to our new answer on the right side, which is also cos x.